Coughing syrup. 3 days later, Temba comes back for checkup, and the doctor asks, "Well, are you still coughing?" "No, I'm afraid to, doc," said Temba. "Good evening, and welcome to Talk with Rams Live on this Monday. I think it's the 11th of May. Don't blame me if I don't know dates, guys. I mean, every day looks the same, but I know it's a Monday because today we're launching our Game Changer series. It's a series I used to have on radio, and people have asked for it. And tonight, we start with Mbali Nwoko, an award-winning commercial farmer, entrepreneur, speaker, and columnist. She is a BCom industrial psychology graduate and is also a Gibbs alumni, Gordon Institute of Business Science alumni. She is CEO of Green Terrace, which is an agribusiness based in Johannesburg that farms high-value vegetable crops and supplies to leading retailers, food processing companies, and the fresh produce markets across South Africa. Now, Mbali has been around. She's got accolades. I can read them for the whole night. I'll leave some of them to her. But she's winner of the new Entrepreneur Award, Black Business Quarterly 2020, Top 100 Influential Young South Africans, Advanced Media 2020, 100 Most Influential Young Africans, Africa Youth Awards 2019. Okay, I'm gonna stop, Mbali, because you're blushing now, and like I'm always embarrassing you about these accolades. But good evening to you, and thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you, Rams. Good evening. Thank you for inviting me to your show.
I can't make a relationship between the industrial psychologist and the Gibbs alumni, and then this farmer, this agricultural specialist. I mean, but we'll get there. But where does the journey begin? Who's Mbali? Where's home? Where does your life begin?
So I was born in Mbali Nkabinde to a middle-class family. I am the first of 3 children. And for most of my childhood, I grew up in the East Rand in Spruitview. I went to fairly decent schools. My favorite sports, as early as I can remember, has always been swimming. So I was very competitive. I enjoyed swimming a lot. I enjoyed sports. And growing up, I think I was an individual who was very shy. I think I still am, but quite reserved and introvert. And surprisingly, I had a lot of friends as well. So my childhood was fun. I can remember a number of memories. You know, I was a typical child, playing Ichigako, Amatini, Bibe. You know, on holidays, I would travel to my grandmother's place in Orlando West, and would play with another set of kids. So my childhood has good memories, very close-knit family. And I think it was a fairly decent Model C. I was brought up in a fairly modern, middle class home, and I think that's as much as I could put on.
Okay, great. I mean, I get that. I take it, Spruitview. It's okay. It means you guys, we get that. And you also, you came to my neighborhood. Orlando West is in the neighborhood where I grew up. Further down the road. So makes sense. And then you go to study industrial psychology. I'm sure the plan was not to end up as being a supplier of produce to retailers.
Absolutely not. And the plan was not even to study industrial psychology. I think my life is just a whirlwind of risk-taking moments that have eventually landed me to my path or to my purpose. But when I recall being in grade 11, when it was time to pick certain stuff, or I think it's standard 10, no, what is it, grade 10, yes, sorry for that. Grade 10, where we had to pick our subjects and so forth. And I always thought maybe I'd become a pediatrician because I liked, I just wanted to be a doctor, but, I have a soft spot for children. So firstly, my first choice was to be a pediatrician, and then my mom encouraged me, or rather forced me, to do aeronautical engineering. And she just said, so, that's something you must study. And I had no idea what that was, but the term engineering for me was, I think, a turn off, if I could put it lightly. And then my grade 11 teacher mentioned industrial psychology, that a daughter did industrial psychology and she's loving it, and it's a career that very few venture into. And that always stuck with me within high school. So when it came to applying for your degree in university, I put industrial psychology as first on the map, because medicine for me was, especially being the first in the family and other two siblings coming up behind me, I think it just, the prospects of having to go out and study medicine was just too expensive for my parents to afford. So I landed up at UJ, did a 4-year degree, a BCom industrial psychology, and yeah, I graduated in that. I think I enjoyed my degree, my 3rd and 4th year, much more, because then I could understand really what it is I'm studying. And how I landed up to farming. So I could start by saying, once I graduated, I then, found employment in the recruitment or talent management space. I was a recruiter for 2 years. Then I left that and started my own business, which was called Clientscape, which I co-founded with a friend of mine. We managed that business for 4 years, and it was a thrill. I mean, I was 25 when I started Clientscape, so I consider myself still fairly young and very naive, but I was very good at recruitment. Typically people that studied industrial psychology or HR back then, if you couldn't get an HR role, which for me, I never thought HR, fit very well with my personality. I think I was more dynamic than that. But typically then HR and industrial psychology, they would move you into a recruiter's role if you couldn't get a formalized HR position or HR generalist position. So I think the prospects for me in recruitment was quite exciting, because it's helping people find careers that they could not ordinarily find for themselves, or land themselves in jobs that they could not ordinarily land on their own. And I just, as being a recruiter, I advanced in my career, from general recruiter to more of a mid-level or senior recruiter. I developed strong relationships with clients then, and I had a knack for it. So it came when I left my one company to join another JSE listed recruitment company, and I thought, the grass is greener on the other side, but actually it wasn't the case, and I was very miserable in that role. I left the company within 3 months of working there, and I started my own recruitment agency, and I think it was the best decision I've ever made, because again, I enjoyed what I did, but I still had their aspirations to be self-employed, so starting that recruitment company was a step in my entrepreneurial journey. And then towards the end of 2015, beginning of 2016, the economy wasn't doing so well anymore, because a lot of our clients were in the technical, mining, industrial, automation space. And the economy wasn't doing well, and a lot of the clients were starting to freeze the roles. So it was becoming a lot tougher to find business and, continue. And I met an individual by the name of Eric, and he was starting out his farming journey. We met at an entrepreneurial workshop, and the conversation started flowing when he told me what he does, and I told him what I did, but I was just stopped him in his tracks, and I thought, what farming? Firstly, don't you need to be a multimillionaire to start farming? Those were the typical questions that I had to ask, because my concept of farming then was like, you really had to be extremely rich to firstly own land, to have all these fancy equipments like tractors and so forth.
Yeah.
But after probing Eric for I don't know how many minutes or an hour or so, I just went home and I just started doing my own research about agriculture and the landscape within farming in South Africa, and on a global level, opportunities for women, you know, anything that I could Google, I just latched on and I just started reading and researching. And it didn't take me about 2 weeks to register a business, but in my mind, I'd already told myself, this is what I'm going to pursue. It just felt right. And I started Green Terrace, and I think, yeah, after my business was registered in June, I went out to go look for land, and I found a farm that I could rent, and I just started planting. So that's how the journey started. It wasn't planned.
Hold on right there. Hold on right there, man. And before I ask you my follow-up question,
Okay.
the global business connector, good friend of mine on Instagram, makes a very interesting comment. You know, when you join the JSE listed company, and he said you thought the grass would be green on the other side. Is that
Yes.
he said would that have been the reason to grow your own grass and start a farm?
Definitely. I think that could apply to what I'm doing now. Definitely grew my own business, started farming, not grass, but vegetables.
Good. I hear you. I mean, it makes sense to me. But how would you have chosen which part of farming to go into?
So in my conversations with Eric, he was a vegetable farmer already. So I just latched on what he was currently doing, because I thought, should I encounter any problems, he'd be the first go-to person to seek advice, you know.
Yeah.
And I thought of livestock farming, and for me, off the cuff, it just didn't fit with who I am, because, you know, I'm very sensitive, and I mean, I don't own a pet simply because I know that pets die at some point in time, and you know, it's you after having a connection a connection with them, you know, a personal connection with them. So for me, livestock was really not the option, simply because I was afraid that, you know, these are animals that could eventually die, and I don't know how I would take that heartbreak. But with crops, as much as they could be destroyed by rain, for example, or excessive hail, they always regrow, you know. And for me, I just took that liking into vegetables, and I think it was easier for me to find markets, and it was the most easiest crop or commodity to venture into within farming.
Okay. Let me acknowledge Tuso Sebako and Fikile Mokwantle on Facebook, who just joined us on Instagram. The Touch Passion is here. Got the Global Business Connectors I mentioned earlier. Meg Zwani is here, and Moloi Tsele is here. I'm not sure if I'm getting it right, but I'm rushing. But thank you very much for joining us, guys. If you have questions, please post them, or comments. But most importantly, I think I want comments, because you know, it's not about questions. It's about how you appreciate the journey that this woman has taken. Now, Mbali, you make it sound too easy and romantic. You know, like going into a salon and doing your hair and walking out. Getting to rent a farm and get going is not as simple as that. You should have had some bit of capital somewhere to get going.
So when I started Green Terrace, I started with 50,000 Rand in the bank, and I planned how I would push or stretch that 50,000 in a space of about 3 to 4 months prior to my first crop, or prior to harvesting my first crop. And so from what started off as 50,000 Rand, which I had to pay myself a salary in, 2 employees, having rented only a 2-hectare in a 14-hectare farm, planted about 30,000 seedlings back then of spinach. I had to forecast how this initial capital injection, you know, would see me through the months prior to making my first harvest. And indeed, once I started harvesting, all that capital the revenue that the business was generating, we applied it back into the business, and by reinvesting in more seedlings, planting more, seeking more markets. So as I was planting,
I need to stop you. I know a little bit about agriculture, and especially about crop farming. Now, we don't plant today and harvest tomorrow. So you
Absolutely.
would have spent that 50 on yourself and the crops and the seedlings and the land and the irrigation and all of that, and then you have to wait for harvest. That takes a bit of
Mm.
time. So before you could harvest and sell and reinvest, what there would have been hurdles in between.
I think I was in my journey, I was fortunate enough because the farm that I was renting already had existing infrastructure. So I didn't have to buy things like irrigation, so it was just about renting a tractor from a nearby farmer. And again, I was renting a 2-hectare farm. So I was renting in a 14-hectare farm, but only 2 hectares worth of land. And when I started planting, I only planted in about a quarter of that 2 hectare.
Hmm.
Right. So I didn't really go all out of the cuff because I had to really, like I said, stretch that 50,000 Rand that I had. So yes, there were months where I think personally, I wasn't obviously drawing anything from the business, but luckily, as I was, as I started the journey into farming, I was still then slowly exiting out of my role my role or my duties as an owner of a recruitment company. So there were still certain clients that I was servicing at that time. And, at least that income could allow me to manage my own personal finances without having to, draw from the farm account when the sales eventually also came through. So when I did harvest initially, all that revenue went back into ordering and buying more seedlings and fertilizers and insecticides. So those are mostly mainly my expenses, in addition to the 2 employees that I had.
So that was what, 2016?
That was 2016.
2016. It's 4 years later now. How
Yeah.
much more are you planting? I'm sure you will have expanded to more hectareage, and there's more people now, and there's more blisters on the fingers.
Yes. So I think I started planting my first crop in July 2016 on renting that 2 hectare. And then by September, then I took over the entire farm. I think it was just an ambitious move from my side. And because my landlord, she was a retired teacher, and I think she was really impressed with the work that I was doing on the 2 hectares. And she said to me, Mbali, you know what? You're young. You've got much more energy than I have. Please take over the farm. So also, when I took over the farm, I inherited certain crops that had already been planted. So my job was only to seek markets. So then I grew from 2 hectares to managing that whole entire 14-hectare farm. And I suppose in my growing plan, added more crops into that mix. And then, I definitely had my challenges. I can't say it was smooth sailing.
And I don't want it to sound romantic. At the same time,
No,
of course, I don't want that to sound like, it's always difficult. It would be easy
yeah,
somewhere, but there have to be difficult moments. In fact, I mean, one of my friends has a live show on Facebook, and today he was talking about the fact that 2020 agriculture is still seen as a white space, but even more so white and male. And here's a black female getting into that space. It would have been difficult. I'm sure. Well, somebody asked, was getting the land easy? It seems you had a good relationship, but was getting into the market easy though?
I really don't want to say it's easy. I don't want to say it was easy, but for me, I didn't find difficulty in getting into the market, simply because of the role that I'd come in previously. When you're a recruiter, you're almost trained to do hard sales. So, but I found marketing my vegetables much easier than presenting to clients to possibly hire 3 candidates for a CFO position, for example. And simply how I did it is, before I knew that we had to harvest, for example, with spinach being my first crop, we literally, to go and seek market, I harvested a few bunches, put them in my car, and then I started driving around, firstly in the township. I recall it was in Katlehong as a straight, and I marketed to the hawkers that were selling by the taxi rank. And they were essentially my first set of clients. There were about 30 hawkers who would then call me like it's between 6 and 9 o'clock in the morning, put in their orders. By 12 o'clock, we're harvesting over 250 bunches for them. And then then I landed my first retail client simply by having attended a farmer's day at the Joburg Fresh Produce Market. And the CEO was making a keynote speech. And then when we went to go sit down, I literally just walked up to him and I said, you know what? I'm a farmer. I'm very proud of your brand, and I really would like to send my produce through to your stores. And by luck, he just wrote down his cell phone number and his email address to me. And he said, please just email me your quantities and I'll get my team to come through to your farm. And I did that. But when I had to email him, I looked around my farm in terms of how many stores of that specific retail are in close proximity. So I did that small research and then I created a nice email to him and I said, hi, Mr. So-and-so, we met at this farmer's market. I'm situated in Boksburg, and around my farm, there are about 7 of your stores, and I listed all the addresses. And I said, this is how much bunches of spinach I can supply in a week. I'm happy to come show your buyers my quality. And he responded by saying that he will actually send people to my farm. So about 2 weeks later, the head of sustainability was there, and one of their buyers for the East Rand region was at the farm. And they were happy with my produce, and they asked me, when can you start delivering? You know, but obviously there were small hurdles, I must add as well. There were small hurdles where, especially when supplying to retail, you know, food security and the safety of food is not food security, sorry, food safety is very important. So they had those requirements about refrigerated trucks and so forth, and I didn't have that. And but I did say, you know what, because I'm supplying you spinach which can easily wilt if not, you know, if the shelf life is not maintained. I told them I would harvest in the morning and send to you guys in the morning, or I could harvest late afternoons and send to you guys late afternoons. And we had a working plan, but you know, they really supported me from there on. And then how I found additional markets is, you know, I don't stay at the farm. So every day when I travel to and from the farm, in my car, I would take note of all these trucks that are passing by. So you can see they've written X and Y fresh, or fresh to go, or vegetable supply. So I would mentally take notes or take pictures of those farms. Sorry, the trucks. The trucks passing by on the highway, you know, also when you're stuck in traffic. So mentally, I would mentally take note and take pictures. And then when I get home, I would go on to Google and then I'd research the company. Then I'd see, okay, for example, it could be like X and Y fruit and veg supplies. I would contact them. Sometimes they have their salespeople details listed on their website, and I'd speak to them and say, okay, I'm a farmer, I can provide X amount of produce to you on a weekly or daily basis. And then typically the response is, okay, thank you, let's come see, bring your samples, let's see what you have. And literally I went, bought my samples, and then we just negotiate right there and there. They see the quality. And again, my commodity was spinach because I had planted so much. And they said, wow, this is nice, fresh spinach. How much can you bring, you know, in a day, or how many bunches can you bring? And then let's say, okay, market price is X. Are you happy with this price? And then it would just be a negotiating tactic. And then once you're happy, then I'd start supplying. So really, that's how I grew my customer base. I think it's just really being about being more creative in terms of how you find clients.
Wow. Rodney has just joined us on Facebook. So has Kilebogile. She says, great story. Was it easy to get land for renting? I think you've already answered that one. Lucille Moore is also with us. Coltrane Munya is here. Daniel Chorizo says, I'm inspired. Salem Nodwawalonyati is watching. Pilani Njapa is also watching. Daniel Chorizo says, I'm proud of this lady. Wow, wow, wow. Black child, everything is possible. And Dorothy Kosi Kyobeka says, great story. I love your passion. So it's not even me, it's people saying this about you.
Yeah.
My concern is not about you. Is are we getting more black female players in this space?
Mm. I can
Especially
say
in primary agriculture. People get involved in secondary and then processing and stuff like that, but in
yes.
primary agriculture.
Yeah, I can definitely say yes. And another thing is, it's not about are we getting more. The question is, are they there? And my immediate answer is a definite yes. You know, there are a lot of women in farming of color as well. And across South Africa, you know, vegetable farmers, grain, livestock, you name it, citrus, you know, everyone's just going about their day at their farms, running their businesses quietly so it's unfortunate that, you know, you can't find a typical farm business online like how you'd find maybe an accounting firm online, you know what I mean? And maybe it's a mistake that we farmers are making because we're not promoting our businesses enough. Because, and I want to emphasize that point, is that when you are a farmer, you are a business. So I can definitely say, Rams, there are there. Some of them are, you know, I've also networked with them in the past, and also reached out to them for certain advice. And where you meet them is at conferences and farmers events, or you know, when you speak to your clients that say, oh, there's another lady, for example, or there's another individual farming the same crop, and she also had maybe a problem with X pest, you know, and maybe you could speak to her and find out how she overcame that. So that's how, you know, I've gotten to know and have good relationships with other farmers. But I can definitely say there are plenty of us women, and I suppose in the industry, and women who are of color.
So I'm going to ask you two last questions before we conclude. Is it going to be this for the longest time ahead, or are you looking at diversifying into something else, even in the same industry? That's question one.
Yeah.
Let's deal with that first.
Okay. So yes, I think I'm at a point in my life where my brand or business is definitely growing. I'm developing a new farm right now, and I'm going to niche in a specific crop. So I'm very excited about that. So I still see myself as new in the industry. I mean, I've only been farming for 4 years, you know, and when you look at more established farmers, they've been farming for decades. Still, you know, focusing on a primary crop. So for now, I still really have a lot of clients that I need to service and grow my business. And I really haven't met my goals as yet on a personal or business level. So I'm going to stick with primary agriculture for the next few years.
Finally, Mbali, a lot of people watching us now who will watch this for the many years to come would want to know, how do they get in touch with you, to do business with you, to be motivated by you, to learn from you?
Okay, so I am available across all social media networks, particularly being Twitter, LinkedIn, as well as on YouTube. And my handle on all of those social media networks is at Mbali Nwoko. Most importantly, I do, there's a couple of videos that I started doing last year, simply because people would reach out to me asking me to mentor them. And, you know, at the end of the day, I still run and own a business, and I need to make sure that it grows. So I can't really mentor everyone, you know, that comes seeking advice. But I took those questions and emails that people sent through to me and translated them in videos. So on my YouTube channel, which is at Mbali Nwoko, I've posted all my videos that I've done thus far, and I'm currently posting new ones every single week, every Wednesday to be precise. And I deal with topics that the frequently asked questions that people want to know about farming. So, and then I've also got my own personal website, which is mbalinwoko.com. And that's where I post other blogs about just general information around agriculture. And yeah, I think if they want to know more about Green Terrace, they can also go to our website, which is www.greenterrace.co.za.
Well, Mbali can attest to you how long I've chased to speak to her because her story inspired me the first time I saw it and I wanted to talk to her. And I'm glad that I finally get to speak to her in a platform that is my own, that I control, and I can celebrate her work. I love
Wow.
what you do. I love what you've done for us. You've encouraged us to think differently, Mbali, and I know that you're going to do even much better. I truly appreciate your work, and I thank you so much for the time you spent with me tonight.
Thank you so much, Rams. Have a good evening.
Have a great evening. We shall spread the word about you.
Yeah.
Tomorrow is Opportunity Tuesday. We shall bring you some opportunity that lies somewhere. Do listen in. And of course, a quickie, one small business that will give 5 to 10 minutes of good time to market themselves. And then, of course, for the rest of the week, the other programming will continue. Truly appreciate your patronage, watching, asking questions, sending comments. Stay with us and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Talk with Rams. From me, Rams Mabote, good night and God bless.